Earth shelters versus straw bale housing and air pipe technology. Yeah. I mean, I kind of think there could be a marriage of different thoughts and technology to make a house that's truly green and wonderful. Freedom Phil likes to describe. I like all this weird technology, and the problem is a lot of times when you build this stuff and you're the first one to do some of these things, like like you talk about an aluminum pop can heater, and people just look at you with their eyes glaze over. Oh my god, that's so ghetto. But it's like when you're heating your house for free and they're paying for electricity, propane, or whatever. I mean, look, I love me a wood stove. There ain't nothing like cooking on a wood stove. You're like, I'm heating my house and I'm cooking my food. I love that. In fact, I eventually want to get for this place a Vermont bun baker because it's just such a cool stove. Yes, it's expensive, but I think it's worth it. I mean, it's kind of, we all have our little things. That's one of mine. But I think about like housing as far as heating and cooling. Just it's not. And I'm not trying to save the world with any of this crap. By the way, I'm looking at designs that save people money. And so I look at the earth shelter, and the earth shelter is the multiple hundreds of years design where it's built into the ground. You got to use a lot of concrete. Concrete's quite destructive, getting the materials out of the ground and processing, a lot of carbon involved. So I look at that and think to myself, huh, it's green because over the lifespan of that house, assuming there isn't some major earthquake, like tectonic break level stuff, you have a situation where you're good. You're good for a long time. You don't have to heat it. You don't have to cool it. It'll stay a steady 50, 60 degrees. And for people who think, oh, you're living in the ground, that's weird. You have little like light domes on the top. Light comes through, white walls and all that. When you're sitting back watching The Price is Right or football or something, and you just say you go to the fridge to get a beer, and it's pretty much exactly the same as a normal life. You forget all this weirdness of it. And so I think people can get past that. But then I think to myself, is it really that green? And the answer is sort of, because lifespan, yes. But then we go over to like some other technologies. Like before I get to the straw bale house, I want to talk about this guy who did this thing called greenhouse in the snow. Alliance, Nebraska, he basically built his house into the ground a ways, and then he put a bunch of air pipes into his lawn about I think it was 6 inch pipe was about 8 or 9, 10 feet down in the ground. So you go that deep and you're going to get a steady 50, 60 degrees in most of the planet. And so he'd blow the air in and then it'd come out as 50, 60 degrees, which made his heating and cooling in a place that gets down to minus 20 during the winter on the regular. It made it, vastly less than everybody else. And he built a greenhouse because he was like, well, I like this so much. He built a greenhouse just for his entertainment, just and giggles to prove it was possible. And he's growing citrus in a place that gets down to minus 20 with no heaters. All he has is those fans running air through the air pipe. If it gets too hot, runs air through it, it comes out 50, 60 degrees. Gets too cold, runs the air pipe, comes out 50, 60 degrees. Light, he has a southern exposure, so he has a little bit of a light reflector. And so he gets more than enough sun to do everything he needs. He's growing all sorts of tropical foods in Alliance, Nebraska. So take that same line of thinking with that air pipe technology and where it's applicable. Let's say you don't want to have an earth shelter. I can understand it. Maybe it's not your thing. Maybe your area isn't really good for it. There's lots of good land out there that has too much groundwater issues to ever really do something like that. Like you'd be like, I would not put in a basement on this place. So I was looking at these straw bale houses, and some of these have been around in the Midwest for over 100 years, still working just fine after 100 years. And the thing about a house is, and this house is a good example of it. I don't know if you can see how thick these walls are, but my walls are 2 inches shy of 2 inches or 2 feet thick, like so, 22 inches. People are like, well, how the hell did that happen? Is this a straw bale house? No, this house has metal siding, giant stone block, and then air gap brick, and then now it has 2x4 with foam insulation, and then above I have 2 feet of blow in. So I have a really good R value for this house. I can open the windows on a cold day, cold morning, mid-afternoon, it gets warm. It jumps about 20 to 30 degrees on an average here during the fall and the spring. So in the afternoon, you just open the windows, warm air comes through, and your house will hold that same temperature for about 2, 3, 4 days. It'll go down a little every day. But I got to thinking about that, and the same thing with the summer. Okay, so it's like, 90 to 100 degrees outside during the day. At night, you just open the windows, let the air come through the house, especially in the mornings, and then you just close it all up before it gets all ridiculously hot. You don't need any sort of AC for that. So that insulation is the key factor, whether it's insulation that protects you from the outside elements or it's built underground to where you're getting that free 50, 60-degree temperature. Now let's take this a step further. What about a straw bale house? Some of these houses have like an R50, over R50 plus factor. Like I was looking it up and they have a hard time quantifying it because it's so damn good at insulation. I know some people say, well, what about the potential for rodents and other things? There's ways you can treat a bale, and that bale is built into the house. So, and for people to say the rodent issue, come on. If you have a house, you might have a rodent issue at some point. Let's be real about that. And what you need to do is control the rodent population on the regular. You set up your traps, your poison, all that stuff. And for the other, you don't like poison, you set up your cats. Okay, you have your cats on the regular. But what's funny about cats sometimes is a cat that gets too well fed ain't a mouser. So unless they just like killing shit. And I don't know. Oh God, there was one time this cat my mother had. We were taking care of it. They were doing some vacation, and he went up to Island Park and he literally gorged himself on rodents, like literally, like. And the owl was trying to dive on him too, but he went and killed and ate so many of them, he vomited them up. It's like, whoa, dude, have a bit too many. You always want a mouser like that. But back to the whole straw bale house. You're talking a house that has this level of insulation. You could build this all over the country. I mean, they build them in the Midwest. So what if you did the air pipe technology, that 10, 8, 9, 10 feet into the ground, you got to dig it once, build the materials well down there, and then you could just blow air through there. Just like you would do with like injection wells and all that. Like the reason I don't like the whole injection well idea is the whole fluids, what they're building is a very costly, overpriced situation. What I'm recommending is literally something you could do with a yard and just, make sure to call the locals and make sure there's no pipes and wires. But you could dig down into the ground and you do this once with a backhoe, and then you build your deal, and it'll be good for the rest of your life. So, I mean, assuming you use good, proper pipes and technology, yeah, you got a heating and cooling system that all you have to do is run fans. And that's literally something you could power with just like a solar system. You have your solar system building up your solar generator. They call them solar generators, but they're really just storage systems. I fucking hate that terminology. But you could get all the power you need from the sun. You could even, if you wanted to heat your house up even more, on the sunny days, you could use like aluminum pop can heaters. And it's the worst name. They need a better name for them, but they're aluminum solar heaters, where basically you have either an aluminum pipe that's painted flat black. It's built into, like, say, a rectangular box, and the taller it gets, the more the heat actually starts sucking itself out, like it starts drafting. So you take the box with the glass on the front, glass is on the front, box back here, and then basically air comes in the bottom of the house temperature, let's say 50, 60 degrees from the ground, and then it hits the sun, those blackened pipes, those flat black pane pipes, and it superheats. And it comes out 140 to 200 degrees just from the sunlight. And with the right insulation, so the next day is cloudy. And even then, you still get some solar action from that. But the situation is that once you get that going, you have the insulation that'll keep your house that temperature for however long. And you can even set this up as an automatic thing. Like once the temperature in the unit gets hotter than the inside of the house, then it switches on. And once it gets colder, it just turns off the flap and closes it. Pretty damn simple technology. It could be normal and automated, just like anything else. Just like your AC, just like the way you turn that dial there, it could be that way. Now, one would argue, what about days that don't have the right sun or whatnot? Sure. I mean, classic wood stove. I love wood stoves, by the way. I'd love to have a Vermont bun burner in here. Um, Bun baker, I should say. It's a wood stove that has the tops where you can take off the tops, and then it has an oven on the bottom. And I'm gonna get one of those. I mean, I'm part of the reason I'm going back to trucking to work is there's certain improvements I want to do to this house. I'm like, if I'm gonna live in this place long term at any point, I will have that stove. As an old man, I will be like, I'm cooking my food, yeah, on fire. But you could always use like natural gas and other technologies too. All sorts of different ways of doing it. And I mean, I love recycling all sorts of materials. Like I've seen people build cardboard fire logs. I've even seen people make it's kind of weird, but cow and horse nugget. Um, fire logs, and they say, well, when they burn, they just smell like burning grass, and they get compressed and all that. And I look at that and I think to myself, we have all this technology, we have all this potential, and I know it's weird, I know it looks different, but you know, if you really want to do a greenhouse, there's a lot of ways we could do it. And part of it is it's not just wanting to build it; it's actually also the activism that people are going to have to take up. Like talk about it with people. And when it comes to your building codes, fight for it. Like composting toilets are weird to a lot of people, but certain areas that happen to have a lot more laid back hippie logger type of people, like where I grew up on the West Coast, certain counties allow them. And you know why? Because they realize they fucking work. They work just fine. So you don't need this massive septic system, or incinerating toilets as well. They work just fine. People have built in desert areas like the water recycling. Like me, I only go through them in the wasteland about a gallon, maybe 2 gallons a day of water. Sometimes less than a gallon. I'm not kidding. I know how to bathe with almost nothing. And like, well, how clean do you get? Well, I'm not really that dirty to begin with. It's more or less just washing yourself. But the point is that if I can do that, and then there's systems like hydro loops, where they literally, all the gray water you have, some people even have found ways to recycle black water, but I say just eliminate the black water. You know, have a, like, the only thing I would have that would use water in that facility, I would have a bidet, but that's a luxury. And I would use all the fluids of that. I'd just run into my rose garden. Like, well, how do you have such wonderful roses? It's my secret. But basically, when you eliminate all this stuff and you got a hydro loop recycling the majority of your gray water, you could literally collect more than enough water just from the rain. You could have a house that produces more than enough energy. You know, you have all the energy you need. You could even put your excess energy into your car. I'm not a fan of full electric, but I like the whole like electric hybrid. That way, if there's a lot of gas stations, not a lot of charging stations. So if I'm at home, I could just take my excess energy from my solar system after I'm topped off for everything else and just put it in my car. And then if I actually have my car already topped off, maybe I just pump water uphill for no reason. Maybe pump it up to a Pila or something, you know? But the point, and then the Pila doesn't necessarily just have to be for the emergency for the house. It can also be your gravity fed water system. These are things we can do. We have the technology right now. And I guess part of when I look at general society, I get it. Most people, this is over their heads. It's boring. It's, oh God, it's not what they're thinking. It's not either, getting laid or, um, money, sports, or whatnot. Like, don't get me wrong, there's times for all of that. But I feel like we're really just holding ourselves back. And some of it's just because we just do it because our parents did it. And we have slightly better technology. I mean, like, look, let's be real about it. With the exception of some of the hybrids, like there's cars that get 70 miles to the gallon, little like economy cars. So, there's probably some out there to get 80. A Renault Master from France, I saw them down in Mexico. They get like, I think 43. It's a van. It's a master van. It gets 43 to 47, I think, to the gallon. It's a little diesel deal. If you don't believe that's possible, go back and look at the diesel Volkswagens from back in the day. It got incredible mileage. There was a Mitsubishi model too. I can't remember the Daihatsu or whatever it was called. It got this incredibly good mileage. Was it going to win a race? No, but it got incredible mileage. We already had the technology years ago, but most people get stuck into the normacy bias. My Ford Escort from 93 Escort got 35 miles to the gallon. Look at how many cars are barely getting over that today. Don't get me to safety and environmental shit. We're literally holding ourselves back. And we have the technology. So, I don't know. You know, I think if more people thought about it, talked about it, looked into it, I think part of the reason I think this way, when I was a kid, there were some teachers that talked about, like composting and energy usage. And I'm never going to be like some sort of Sheldon Cooper level thinking type of dude. I'm not even a scientist, but at least because somebody scientific got me interested in thinking and efficiency is part of my nature. Um, I think about it now. So introduce your kids to better technology. Question them, make them think. Because what you put, those seeds you plant today, it's just like with trees. You don't plant a tree so you can enjoy it tomorrow. You plant trees so your children, your grandchildren can enjoy the shade they'll enjoy. And they said the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, but we can still do it today. It's Freedom Phil. Like, subscribe, take it easy.